Hi, this is Ken from CAD Image, and in this session today we're going to be taking a look at an introduction to our CAD Image stairs. Today I'm actually using the international version of Archicad 19, which was launched just a couple of days ago. Our current lineup of tools consists of these 7 different programs, with doors and windows, keynotes, cabinets, coverings, objective, electrical, and then, as I say today, we're going to be looking at the stairs tool. Our stairs have been designed to be very flexible when it comes to designing and manipulating the objects that we create, especially when compared to some of the standard stair objects that are available with Archicad. So the first thing we'll look at is the stair geometry, and in fact we have a dialogue here which actually has nothing to do with our stair tool. We don't use anything at all like that. When it comes to our stair design and our stair setout, in terms of dialogue, all we do is choose the stair structure, the construction type. So we have 3 types, we have a solid, a floating, and a stringer-based stair. On plan, they'll look fairly similar. There are slight differences you can see here where the stringers are visible, but it's really 3D where we notice things. So if we go in here we can start to see the different types we have. So here we have a solid stair, we then have a floating stair, with and without the risers. We then have the 4 different geometries that we can set for stringer-based stairs. And obviously these can all be customised in terms of sizes and properties and materials and finishes, etc, but it gives you a bit of a taster. So here we have full stringers, here we have cut strings, here we have cantilevered treads coming off the strings, and here we have a central spine. When it comes to stair design, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have a dialogue. This is what we start with. We start with a blank canvas. So what I need to do is, before I start to draw, I need to actually just check a couple of settings. For that, I'm going to come across here. You'll see there's 2 new tools have been added to the toolbox. We have our polystair tool and also the railing tool, which works with and without the stairs. We can use it freestanding as well. So I'm going to go to the polystair tool and just double click. Dialog pops up, and here are the 3 options that we can choose from. So do we want solid, do we want floating, or do we want stringers? So let's begin with a solid. And we get a little preview so we can see how it's going to be placed. The important thing to point out here is these 3 hotspots. These determine the placement. So if I go here, I'm going to have a left-hand reference line. If I go here, I'm going to have a right-hand reference line. Or if I go in the middle, it's going to run down the middle, surprisingly. So let's go for the left. We can then do a couple of quick checks. So structurally, our floor-to-floor height is 3000. Our width is 1200. So let's just make that 900. If we look at the treads and risers, we'll get the option here for vertical or angled. We can set the various parameters for the thicknesses, the depths, etc. And we can check some of the structure settings here as well. So I'm just going to offset the edges 50mm. You'll see also at the top here, we can switch between our general attributes. We have our surfaces. So let's make the treads oak light. We'll keep the risers and the structure as concrete. We also have options here to go and change the pen settings for various aspects. So that's all I'm going to change here. There are further options you can see here for flight and landing and also for the symbol, but I'm going to just draw something first and then we'll come back and look at this later. So all I do is hit OK. In terms of drawing, so literally a click to start, you'll see a couple of things happen. I'll zoom in a little bit closer. You can see this rubber band stair follow the mouse. There's also this stair placement palette appears. We'll put that in the middle of the screen so it's nice and clear. And what this does is allows to just draw the stair. So if I just take it as it is, what you'll see happens is I'm able to build a stair. Let's put some winders on there, and then we'll come down here and we'll close off. And I've created my first stair. If I start again, explain a little bit more what's going on. This time I've gone for the central alignment. We have 5 options in terms of the geometry that we create. So this previous one I did was just an L shape with straight edges, but we have different curved options. So the first one, until I draw a straight section, that tangent is not going to be possible. So we can define a tangent, we can do a 3-point arc, or we can create a centre point and a radius to define the curvature. We also have 2 options at the end here. I can switch between whether I'm building a stair or whether I'm building a landing. So what I'll do is I'll create just a short run to begin with. I'll then switch to a landing. So I'll come out here and I'll return, and I'll go back to a stair, but this time rather than just a straight edge, we'll put some sort of curve on it. And off it goes and places it in. You'll see there's a couple of hotspots here. We can actually control where this cut line or break line extends to. If I go to the floor above, we also have independent control on this floor of where that break line starts and finishes. So I'll go back down to the ground floor. A couple of other things to point out as we're drawing. I can literally start, and we use standard sort of Archicad conventional techniques you'd expect. So to place a point, we click. To place another point, we click again. If I keep going here and realise I've made some sort of terrible mistake, I can press the backspace key, and that'll just step back through the previous points, back to the very beginning if I want, but I'm quite happy there. If I was to press the escape key, I would cancel the whole thing, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. We'll do a little return, and then if I want to finish on this point here, we just click again, so twice effectively, on the end point, and that finishes and builds that little segment of stair. So fairly standard Archicad principles that you would expect to see there. So that's fine for freehand stuff and just drawing things in place. What I'm going to do though is switch to a little bit of a plan and actually build a stair that's meant to fit into a particular gap. So for this, I'm going to go back into the settings briefly. So I'm going to do a couple of tweaks. I'm on the ground floor, but the floor to floor is actually 2.8. And the width should be 900. Quick check, so I'm going to come back into some of those settings later. We'll set the alignment for the right hand side. And hit OK. So the first point is here, and this is going to extend up just one tread to here. We'll then switch to a landing from there to there. Switch back to a straight run. I'm going to extend this up to this point here. And then what I want over here is just a nice simple 90-degree turn with some kites. So what I'll do is I'll put the first point in there and the second point on the second hotspot down here. And off it goes, and you can see it's created a nice 90-degree landing in here. We have the turn with the 3 kites on the top landing, and as you saw earlier, I can move that break line up and down to wherever it's required. So you'll see that's given me my ground floor. On the first floor, here's a view that we can see, and we can actually look at the 3D. Now coming back to some of the symbol options, what I'll do actually is go back into the settings, and we actually have an option to put on a head clearance plane. Right now all of these are controlled by model view options, so I'm just going to override that and just put that on manually. Set the height of it, hit OK, and what it actually does is build this transparent glass plane so we can check that we have clearance. So I can see I've got a bit of an issue with that lip on that slab there, but obviously you can go back in and tweak the design to work with that if it is an issue. So moving on, we've had a look at how stairs created, but it's probably more important, as I was just talking there, to be able to edit a stair. So what I've got is just a very simple straight run with a landing that I've already created. This time I'm using the floating stair with the risers, but I don't want to just work with this simple shape. So I'm going to go back to 2D, and what I'm actually going to do is, with it selected, drop into the settings. The important thing to do here is then switch on graphic editing. So if we activate that and hit OK, what you'll see is a whole load more intelligent hotspots appear. These allow us to do different things. So let's begin at the top. We'll take this very top hotspot, and if we take it and move it, you'll see it actually stretches, and it's going to increase the length of that upper leg of the stair. There's then a point at each end. If I pick these up, what these actually allow us to do is change the shape. So we could skew the whole thing, or we could bend the whole thing outwards. Talking of bending it, if we take this middle point, then what we can actually do is curve that shape, so we don't have to have regular straight edges. We can turn them into curves even after we've created the shape. There's then similar points down here, so we could drag out this point, we could grab this point here, and that enables us to stretch the length of the landing. There's also points in the middle that I'm actually able to rotate. So hopefully you can see that quite quickly you can destroy something that was fairly simple and turn it into something much more difficult to build. So there we go, there is my stair. If we switch to 3D, you can see it's all there. It does its best to follow the treads with nice parallel surfaces, but obviously it's kind of a bit of an issue by the time I made a mess of that middle section. So if we go back to 2D, one other thing we can do in terms of editing is go back into the settings, and we have a second graphic editing mode that actually enables us to curve the treads. So what that allows me to do is pick up this bottom point here, and we can put a curvature on each one of those treads. It will neutralise itself as it gets to the next connection, but I could carry that on, maybe curve them the opposite way, coming up for this upper leg of the stair itself. There's also, you see, points on the end of each tread. These actually allow us to put little curves on these ends as well. And again in 3D, you can see how that works. I think we'll go back to 2D. A couple of other things in terms of editing and display just while I'm in here. We have the symbol, I've already mentioned that. We can actually change and control the brake line. We can switch it off completely, we can make it a double brake, we can choose is it a straight or a broken line and set all the parameters. We have options for the structure and how that's actually going to display, so we can set treads beyond the brake line, we can just show the outline, or we can just show the tread tops. We can actually tell it to show the tops with or without the risers hidden. In terms of the rise arrow, we've got further controls over there where it can brake, it can show, it can only show up to the brake line, whatever we want to do with it. And then we've got all the usual controls you'd expect to see for the type of arrowhead, the type of marker at the start, and the same controls at the brake line. So loads of controls in there. And then riser numbers, you get the option to show them all, show them only up to the brake, or just turn them off completely. And you can also control, if you're doing a multi-story, where you get lots of segments of stairs that continue, you can actually set the start number for the risers. So let's start this one on 99. Head clearance I've already looked at. So if we hit OK, you can see off it goes, and we now go 99, 100, da 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 da. So lots of nice simple controls in there. We're moving on from editing, and stairs actually, what we can also do is put railings onto stairs and onto other shapes and objects. So here is a stair I made earlier. This is what it looks like in 3D, and what I'm going to do with it is drop back to the ground floor, and we're going to put a railing onto this stair. So we have a railing tool which we can go into. There's a load of settings, I'll come back to that shortly. So I'm going to select the stair and go into place railings. There's a couple of options in here you can see, place railings and update railings. There's also a third option for help, but we're going to go place railings. What that does is then launch the dialog for me and shows me what's available in terms of the 4 types of railing I can pick from. So we have plain handrail, we have horizontal rails, we have a panelled railing, and then we also have a timber railing, and there's tons of settings behind here. There's actually more settings probably for the railings and the various options for the handrails and the newels and the posts and all the bits and pieces. There's probably more options here than there are for the stairs themselves, but I'm just going to go for a panel railing, so I'll select that, and then we can look at some of the settings here. So general settings are things like what height do we want the various pieces to be at. So this is really pretty tall actually, so let's drop that to not 100, 1000, and we'll bring that to 1200. We can set what the offsets are, the gaps, what the minimum distance is between the intermediate posts, or we could set them on a particular number of treads. We can also control the start shape of the railing, and again we can set the heights and extensions etc. in there. We then have controls for the handrail, so we can make this maybe traditional. You'll see that changes the shape across the top here. Let's actually make it round. We can set the sizes, the widths. Let's make it elliptical. We'll make it 60mm wide. Again, we can put extensions on the start and the end. So let's return to the wall. And the same for the top section. Then we can change the various parameters in here. There's then the intermediate posts. There's none visible on here yet because the panel's not long enough, but we can put on a simple post that we can change, again, the various properties of it. We can set the base, where it's connected to, and then we have control over the panels and the rails themselves. So tons of options in here. I'm not going to go through them all, but it'll give you a taster of what's possible with it. Final one's the symbol, and again this can be controlled with model view options. With stairs, you can control them all with model view options as well, and the nice thing about this is you can then, across a project that may have a few stairs, set the global appearance of how everything actually looks. So I'm going to hit OK with that one. You'll see there is graphic editing. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. I keep saying that a lot, but I will. Click OK, and what actually happens is the screen zooms to the stair that's selected, and if I zoom in a bit closer, hopefully you can see, as I move the mouse around, we're actually able to determine what side the railing goes on. So I can do it only this side, we can do it only that side, or if we bring it into the middle, we can do it on both sides of the stair. So I actually only want it to this edge here, so I'm just going to come down, click the mouse, and off it goes and builds the railing up to the brake line. If I switch to 3D now, you can see how that railing appears as it climbs up. I'm actually going to switch to the floor above though, and now look at how we can place a railing to close off this section here, which right now is a bit of a death trap. So let's just go for the railing tool, and I'm going to double click. I could choose the same one, but I'm going to go for a different one this time. I'm going to go for this one here, and I'll just take the default settings. I'm not too worried about what it looks like because, let's be honest, I don't think anybody's ever going to build this. But if I hit OK, all I'll do is just drop this into place. So just any old place right now, and what I can do is pick it up. Then I'm just going to drag it and snap it onto that edge there. So it might be on the edge, it might be over the edge, whatever you want, you can control it. So with it selected, I'm going to drop back in and I'm going to switch on graphic editing. And we have three options. The first one is insert nodes. We can then curve the edges and we can then adjust the components within that. So we'll go with editing the overall shape. What then happens is a number of hotspots appear. So we have ends that allow us to pick up and stretch. We have controls here that actually allow us to extend and add more sections onto the railing, so I don't actually need that right now, so I'll undo. Same at this end, and then we also have intermediate points, and these allow us to then go and find, there we go, black pencil on the end of that segment of the slab. We can snap that into place. We can then move this one, and I've probably just shot myself in the foot. Yep, because I can't see the point underneath. So let's just move that down here completely, and then we'll move it back. So there's a point right there. So it's almost on top of it. So we'll put it there, and that gives me the control points I need to enable me to drop back in, change now to the curving the edges, and then the midpoints that appear allow me to just snap there and there to then create the curve around that slab. So when we go to 3D, we can see how it physically appears. So the editing and behaviour of that is very similar to what you'd expect with the slab tool, with any sort of polygon in Archicad itself. So if I was to do another quick example, I'm going to take the slab here and I'm actually just going to remove a section from it. If I grab the railing again, go for a different one this time, I'll drop that onto this edge, pick it up, grab the settings, switch on the editing, and then it's just very simple to pick up, stretch that entirely across to here. We can then use the midpoint to create a point there, this midpoint to create one there, this one to create one up there, and then that one to go across and finish off there. And very quickly, you'll see we've created this sort of shape. We also have further controls. If I was to select this railing and now switch on the editing of the posts, you'll see hotspots appear on each one of the posts. We can adjust them, so that's an odd little gap there. We can maybe move these slightly to give us better placement. We can actually take, maybe if I want one, I'm just going to go roughly in the middle, we can actually take this, and if we were to rotate around, what we can actually do is convert it from a post into a newel. So again, when I go back to 3D, we now have an extra newel in the middle here. And obviously we can control the various different settings for the caps and the legs and everything else that's going on in there. But hopefully you can see nice and quickly we can create some railings around all sorts of different geometry, so we're not limited to just working with stairs. Makes it a lot easier to then match, I know I haven't done it here, but it makes it easier to then match your railings on your landing to the railings that are attached to the stair itself. So that's a bit of a run through of CAD stairs. Thanks for taking the time to watch the session. If you've got any questions or looking for more information on the tools, you can have a look at cadimage.com. And if you're a premium subscriber, there's access for objects and downloads that you can get from mycadimage.com. Thanks again for your time.